Welcome back, everyone.
Okay.
I am Julian Johnson. My name today is Big Brother. For the listeners who don't watch the video, I have Tyler, the unperceived.
Yes, always unperceived. Do not want to be perceived.
That's a title I've never heard before.
Yeah.
Yes, and we are not alone today because we're here right now with what I'm going to say is a psychic guide. She wrote Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire. We have Phyllis Levitt with us. How are you, Phyllis? So I guess it's time to ask us the question. The question. Phyllis, do you remember the question?
Not at all.
No, that's okay.
No, that's perfectly fine. Tyler, do you remember the question?
I do. I remember it because I brought it up, but I'm probably going to say it like differently this time. Have you ever been in family therapy, and if not, would you consider it?
Oh, are you asking me that?
Well, it's for everybody, but we would definitely want you to answer first because you're our guest.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for sure. I have done that when my children were little. I did some family therapy with my first husband. And, and I think in my case, I think family therapy is extremely valuable because I think if we don't really understand the dynamics of our family and the values of our family and the conditioning kind of influences of our family members, it's hard to really understand ourselves fully because we're all conditioned by the family units and family dynamics that we live in, and especially with the people that we depend on. So I didn't do family therapy, obviously, as a child, because my parents didn't probably even know about therapy, and probably wouldn't have gone. But I think what it helped me see for myself was it helped me really understand that I had to do some of my own healing work, and that I probably at that point, became really clear that I was not able to heal the marriage that I was in at that time. And it helped me find the strength to leave. And that's not true for everybody. I mean, I think family therapy can be completely healing for a family, and parents can stay together and improve their relationships with each other and with their children and with the world that they interact with. But not all relationships are resolvable, and not all people are at a place in their own healing to resolve the relationships they're in. So for me, it was more of an impetus to do my own work and create my life, from a better foundation.
Okay.
About you guys.
Well, I'm gonna let Julian do it first because
you mentioned something that went back to what else happened in my past weekend of all relationships can't be healed. I might get into that later, but it's not family related. It's friend related, but no, I have never did family therapy, but I do think it would be beneficial for just because not trying to put my family's business out there, but there's been some things that I would definitely think it would be beneficial if we all went separately and together, because I actually mentioned that can't be the glue that holds everything together. That's kind of my role that I took upon myself for the family. But I'm not certified to do that but even me doing my best might not be good enough for what the family needs, especially if I'm X hours away.
Yeah. It's funny that you were talking about being X hours away, because I feel like that's how I'm feeling too, because my family's in a whole nother state from me. So if I were, first off, my family has done family therapy, but I was not a part of it. I think I would have wanted to be, but it would have to been structured differently than what they were doing, because it was for a specific concern that really didn't involve me. But I think since, I feel like before I started getting into therapy, I probably would have been I don't know what I would have done at family therapy. I think sometimes you don't have the tools to really know what you're talking about or what you want to really dig into or what that's even going to look like. And then sometimes I think it also gives you more tools on how to, if something comes up, how are you going to resolve it outside of and within therapy. I think having your own personal therapy helps open you up to that experience more.
Right.
Because before that, I probably would have been on the side of like, I don't know if I need family therapy. I don't know what that would look like. But since being in therapy recently, I think I would appreciate it. But I don't want to make people like ultimatums, because I feel like maybe you can start with family therapy and then it leads you to individual therapy. But I feel like individual therapy helps family therapy. So you kind of almost,
For
it would
sure.
make more sense to do it side by side. And I think sometimes taking on the responsibility of that for each person in your family is another step, or maybe another hurdle that would make family therapy a little harder.
I was just going to jump in and just offer one quick thing to what you were saying, and that is that, often, and there is this interplay between one person's individual mental health and well-being and the whole family system and the dynamics in the family, that they just are interrelated, and you can't really take them apart, even though you sort of have to look at them, right? But often what I found as a therapist is that one person kind of brings the family to therapy. It's usually one person in enough pain or distressed enough or depressed enough or addicted enough or anxious enough that sort of is the beacon that says we need help. And that can bring the family to therapy. And then it's possible to look at how the family can either is harming or can help. And so I know in the beginning of my practice, I worked with a lot of children. And inevitably, they were the one that brought the family to therapy, because most children were really suffering from problems in their family, and they're the identified patient, but they're not really the problem. They're the symptom bearer. And go ahead, yeah.
Oh, no, continue.
I was just going to say again, you have to interrupt me though. But that's the same thing in our country and in our society. The most symptomatic people are calling for help from our larger communities, our schools, our places of business, our houses of worship, our states, and our federal government. They're calling for help for what's not working in some aspect of the family of America. And I think that's a new lens on looking at our most symptomatic citizens.
My bad. There were two thoughts in my head. Because Tyler, you were saying that you weren't part of the family therapy. So were you like the youngest?
Yeah, well, it was on my dad's side. It was more like a siblings thing for them.
Okay.
It wasn't for me per se. And then there was talk of bringing me into it, but then I was like, I don't really want to be brought into something that I don't feel like I just felt like the dynamic was gonna get weird, and I was gonna get kind of pulled into whatever somebody else was trying to defend or whatever else. And I was like, this doesn't seem like a safe place for me to voice what I probably need to. If we had a re-scratch of it, I think I would do it then. Just kind of like fresh on the board, and like I can bring up topics and everybody else can bring up their topics, and then we can just go from there and let a therapist guide us. But I was nowhere in the process, and I think they had been like a couple of sessions in by the time I had heard about it. People were calling me and like, oh yeah, I think, like, some people didn't even think like the therapy was worth it, but they wanted to bring me in to like prove a point, and I was just like, I won't be brought in to prove a point. So
It sounds like it's probably best that you weren't.
Yeah. So I was just like, I would rather have been brought in the beginning of the process, because you thought this would be a helpful thing for our whole family, instead of being in as like a byproduct of an argument, basically. So
Got you. The reason why I asked that is because with my family situation, with my youngest brother, at least how I see the situation is that we kind of not shelter him from but we just try to, what's the word I'm looking for? We're trying to, like, I guess, hide it in a sense. So because he wasn't involved in the situation, or to my knowledge has any memory of past events that happened. So we try not to bring it up, or at least I try not to bring it up to him. So that's the reason why I asked.
I definitely feel like that's kind of like a tough place to be, because I've seen, or I've at least heard from like personal experiences, times when people wanted to be brought into the conversation because something might have been hidden from them, but they can still feel it. And it's like, I know something's happening, and I'd rather people
Mhm.
would have addressed it instead of like keeping it from me. Whereas like
Right.
I had fully known about the situation that they were referring to, and I had already been asked to be like removed from that. And that's why I kind of had that boundary up, because I was like, I know exactly what's happening. I don't want to be a part of this conversation. I don't think I would add to this. And also I have like no context. So it
Mhm.
just and then it was just like wasn't speaking to things that I probably would have even spoke to anyway. So oh wait,
But
but you had a second thing, right?
oh yeah, yeah. I definitely had a second question. I was actually about to
Okay.
get into it. It's just with family therapy. It's kind of what have you done to keep the peace or to keep things stable? I guess is if that makes sense.
For me personally, I feel like I don't try to do that as much because I also have one of those tendencies where people would come to me to kind of like keep the peace or like mediate something. And I was in counseling before in undergrad, and then I got an actual therapist after graduate school because I was just like, after you go into graduate school, like your brain is just scrambled. Then I had my job, and my new job was stressing me out, and all these new changes in life were stressing me out. And I was like, okay, I need a therapist. So,
Mm,
so since I've been kind of like in and out of that process, I've kind of identified, at least for myself, if I can help a situation, I would like to. But it does if it doesn't have anything to do with me, but someone's bringing me in to like prove a point, I'm not gonna be involved in that because I just I don't feel like I want to be used to prove a point anymore. I feel like if you want me to talk with you about the situation because you feel like it's open dialogue, a dialogue, and we can all talk about it, then that feels like more appropriate. Because even it's funny, our friend Keon was on a person who has really kind of opened my eyes to this because at first he used to say this, he used to irritate the mess out of me, but he was like, if you bring up an issue, you have to be able to communicate through it if someone brings back an issue for you as well. Like
mm,
maybe this is feeding into something else that that the other person is feeling from you, and it has to be an open dialogue, or there's just no there's no point, or there's not going to be true resolution out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all really good points. Like we all want to be heard, but it's harder to hear other people. So, you know, one of the one of the most important things is if I want to be heard, I have to be willing to hear you. And I think that's when there's conflict or there's upset, I think that's one of the hardest things for people to do because we just become insistent that we're right and the other person is wrong. And we think if we batter them with that, they'll get it, which is like, doesn't work. And none of us want that to be the way someone talks to us. But it is just sort of the unconscious go-to. So, and I think one of the things that's so helpful about a therapy process, if people really can't work it out themselves, is that a therapist is somebody who helps people listen and sort of sets ground rules for like, how do you listen and how do you respond in a way that a person is interested and open to what you have to say, as well as you learning how to be open to what they have to say. And there's just, there's certain skills we teach people, like, like holding back on just sort of learning to restrain yourself from saying things that are unkind or raising your voice or making disgusted faces or, stomping out, which people do. We get
mm,
reactive and we do these things. And I think the key really is one of the things that why when you brought up several times that you didn't want to be brought in to prove somebody's point. And I think that that's a really important point because the whole value of good therapy, when it's like family therapy or couples therapy or any kind of therapy that involves more than one person, is that the point isn't to prove one person wrong. The point is to help people understand each other and be accountable for their own behavior. And, because usually we have something to be accountable for ourselves, whatever it is. Listen deeply and then really try to reach some kind of resolution and come back together. I mean, the point is that we end up, in a space of care and love and cooperation and nonviolence. And if we can't do that, which sometimes people can't, then to learn how to separate peacefully.
Yeah.
And these
mhm.
are all things that I'm hoping that will happen in our larger context of our country.
I wonder, when you bring up the larger context of the country, do you think it's the role of therapists to do that, or like whose role would that be?
I think I think it's many people's role, but I think it could be the role of the therapeutic community, people who are experts in the field of psychology and human relations and healing trauma and mediation, all of those skills to have a place at the table of our country. And we'd have to vote for that. We'd have to ask for that. We'd have to say, this is what we want as part of our government, that we want trained facilitators in Congress who would actually set the ground rules for differing parties to actually listen to each other and try to reach compromises for the good of the American family. Because, when you look at America through the lens of family systems, we know that if parents are at each other's throats, their children suffer as well as themselves, and their children really suffer. And so I believe that the American population is suffering from all the divisiveness and threats of violence and, horrible rhetoric that we see in the news every day. I think we're all suffering from that. And I think some people feel helpless, some people feel angry, some people feel disgusted, some people stick their head in the sand, or they are then filled with hatred themselves. And none of those things work. So to answer your question, just to go back to the first question, yeah, I would love to see the therapeutic community and the field of psychology. I'd love to see there be a department of psychology, in our government that is really committed to government national health and the mental health of our citizenship. Because that's really the best way to avoid and curb violence and recover from.
Well, I think you bring up a pretty good point, because I do think mental health is one of those things that really has been a gap in not even like nationwide also, but just even on a interpersonal level, there's just such a big gap. I think the gap really became more prevalent just kind of like with how people feel about therapy, because a lot of people even now think therapy is like
for crazy people,
a sign of like being weak. Or like
absolutely.
Like, oh, why would I need therapy? Nothing's like wrong with the fact that you feel like something has to be seriously wrong for you to get therapy is a crazy notion to me, especially now, because I also feel that maybe COVID also kind of, because it was such a big grieving process in itself that like we didn't get to process just on a national level, is just kind of the truth. And then we were just kind of like, we had to go back to work after everybody was so stressed out and didn't know where their next like money was coming from. Now it's like, oh, let's all just go back to work and then like act like it didn't happen.
Oh
And
yeah.
this is just like another sign of it, how like we're just like, okay, well, I mean, the grieving process of anything in life, I feel like is so ignored.
Right.
It's really, really ignored. Like, if you even think about how if you go to a company and you get bereavement, you really only get bereavement to go to the funeral. You don't get bereavement time to actually grieve the person that you lost.
Right.
Which is insane and should actually be a part of it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because grieving doesn't really play a factor. And it's like people think that grieving can just be done in a day, or that it's not reoccurring, because one day you can be fine, one day it's you're right back where you were. Well, I guess I'll go off of this, going back to just what the question I asked, what you do to keep the peace. I think that also plays a part into it, because let's just say your family's having a bad day and everything. You can say, oh, let's go get some ice cream or something, or have family night, or do something just to help. Because no one lives the life that you live, but you can easily do even the little things that probably means a huge difference to someone else.
I know this is gonna sound kind of like, I don't know, I feel silly saying it, but sometimes I feel like enough people don't get hugs. Like, I truly believe that. Like, sometimes if you see someone having like a really hard time or a really hard day, I really feel like a lot of times you just want to be hugged and like acknowledge that you're having a hard day.
Right.
And like that in itself can be enough to just be like, okay, someone like sees me. So, and I don't know. A lot of people, I think maybe that also starts at the family level too sometimes. Because I just know some people who haven't had a lot of physical contact and like physical touch and things like that when they were younger. And it's kind of like now they're kind of like weirded out by it and all this other stuff. But, and then I know some people who like, they hug way more than I do, and I thought I was comfortable with physical touch. I'm like, okay, we don't have to hug this long.
We have to back up.
Yeah, but I appreciate that if I know I see this person, they're legitimately gonna just express anything to me and give me a hug. I know they're the person that I can go to for that kind of comfort, and that in itself can be really comforting too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think people want to be, what's the word you use? Noticed. But I used something that I heard over not too long ago. 3 H's. Do you want to be helped, heard, hugged? Because not everyone wants that physical touch, but they might just want to just let it out. Because I know I'm the type of person to where a hug's nice, but more than likely to help me, hear what I have to say. Because
I think that's really good. I think both are really good. I mean, I think we do need physical touch and we need to feel connected. But one of the things that's the most satisfying in a human relationship is to feel heard, and seen the way you said that. And I think that's what good mental health provides. When people aren't mentally healthy, they don't hear, they don't see other people. They're wrapped up in themselves and their point of view, and that's all there is. And it's very hurtful. And if you have children and you're like that, it's extremely hurtful.
And that sparked what I was trying to say. So with my having a situation with friends that days, I told them like, I'm not okay. I told them this, but because of how the situation unfolded, I told them I don't feel comfortable bringing it to you, because when I brought my feelings to you, I was yelled back at or ignored or something of that nature. So I'm like, when you're ready to have this conversation, come to me, because I can't do anything else. And I know, like you said, everyone needs to be, even though you're hurt, you have to be understanding that they might have been hurt too. So, and I'm willing to have that conversation, but I think there's been a very large miscommunication that I don't know how else to figure out what else to do. But
and sometimes you need a third party to kind of navigate it so that people aren't just in a reactive state, that it helps people calm down and listen. And I know that's a lot of what couples therapy is about. It's like really helping people feel safe enough to not only to express their feelings and try to get their needs met if possible, but also to feel safe enough to hear things that might be uncomfortable to hear. Because that's a part of human relationships too. Like, nobody wants to be a victim, but it's easier to be a victim than a perpetrator. It really is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or to acknowledge that. And perpetrator, by that I just mean, like, we all hurt somebody at some point, maybe not even intentionally. None of us are perfect. And sometimes we say and do things that hurt other people, and that we may know that we're doing that, or we may not know that we're doing that. And we have to be strong enough inside to be able to tolerate hearing things about ourselves that are not so comfortable. And I think that's really hard for people. I really do. I think it takes a lot of strength. So when people say, and like you were referring to, Tyler, earlier, that a lot of people think therapy is a sign of weakness, it's not at all. It's like delving into my own pain or into a sticky relationship takes courage. It takes strength, and it certainly takes strength of character to admit if I'm at fault in something. And yet that's what we want other people to do, right? We all want somebody else to say, I was wrong, I'm sorry. But what about us?
That's true. Self-reflection.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, trust and trusting in others, trusting yourself, trusting in strangers, and how much you do so. And we had ended up on a tangent, and our friend was talking about how self-reflection is like really, really important because the main person who has to be honest with themselves, like you have to be honest with yourself first, and
Right.
more so than anybody else in your life, because if you can't self-reflect, then you're not gonna really be able to see the change that you want to see or be able to trust people like you'd like to in your day-to-day.
And one of the things I see is that to the extent that one person can just be really self-reflective and take responsibility for themselves, it kind of opens the door for other people to do that too. It makes it feel safe to do that.
I feel like sometimes you feel like you're self-reflecting enough, and then you find something else in yourself that you're just like, oh, I haven't reflected on that one yet.
Right.
Self-reflection is a journey.
A journey.
Oh yeah, no. This kind of brings me up to a question on which I think you guys kind of answered is, do you think everyone needs therapy? Because to me personally, I will definitely preface that I have not been in therapy or anything, but just hearing about it, it's more so to not give you the answer, but it's for you to find it, like discover it yourself. So if you're able to ask those deep questions to yourself first, do you really? I don't think you need. I'll change my thought. I don't think you need as much therapy as someone else, but I think if you're able to ask the why, the who, the what, the when, the why, and really dig deep into yourself, therapy. Yeah, I will say therapy is not as, what's the word I'm looking for?
Maybe not as essential or critical.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm going for. But your guys' thoughts?
Well, I'm gonna say that personally, every time I've heard a person say that, they have probably needed therapy. I'm gonna be really honest with you.
That's fine.
Every time a person has said that, they have really needed some therapy. Not in a bad way. I don't know how to describe it, but maybe Phyllis can speak to this more because I'm just saying my opinion on it. But because I've been in therapy, and typically I feel like people who kind of have the same issues as me, I can see that they'd be like, oh, well, I'm normally the person who handles all the issues, and I'm normally the person that can smooth over and have resolution with other people, that maybe I don't need therapy, and or maybe I don't need therapy the same way people are saying it. And I feel like you learn a lot more when you're in a space where all you do is focus on yourself. And another person is dedicated to also focusing on you.
Yeah.
And so they dig in stuff that you probably wouldn't have even thought to ask yourself. And I think it's kind of more of an eye opener than I think some people give it credit to, because sometimes I think there are innate things that people do that they feel like, oh, that's just how I do things, but like they haven't really processed why exactly they do that. Because that's like your norm, and then other people around you, they feel like that's your norm, and it's not harming anybody per se, but maybe you may need to reflect on that and be like, hey, like, why do I do this thing, even if it doesn't harm people actively or is not harming myself or things of that nature. There's stuff that I do that my therapist has kind of made me think about more, that I'm honestly is normal and people have probably liked it about me, but then I had to be like, oh, okay, wait a minute, that's probably not something that I might want to keep doing, especially as a person who has like people pleasing tendencies. People love people pleasers, okay? I'm not gonna lie to you, they love them because they please people. That's what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And like when you're the person who's likable and doing all the stuff that other people enjoy, it's kind of like, well, I mean, what else would I need to talk about? I have no issues personally. Everybody comes to me with their issues, and I feel like I have nothing going on. When really there's probably another extra layer of something that you could focus on within yourself that might even strengthen those relationships. I've recently just been trying to learn to be more vulnerable in relationships, and also be more accepting of different parts of myself that I used to be like very ashamed of. Because I opened up to my therapist and I was telling her one time, I was just like, I feel like I'm boring. Like I literally told her, I was like, I think I'm just so boring. Like all my other friends have like stuff going on and like things that they want to ask advice on. And I don't have as much stuff as them. And I'm like, what is that about? And she was just like, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with me like feeling like you're the boring friend, because people, if that's kind of like how they see you in your life, it might just be comforting just to be like, hey, this person's doing something regular today.
Right.
And I called them just to have a regular conversation, and that's all they needed. So,
And maybe that's why people turn to you, because you sort of have a calm steadiness that is comforting and helpful.
and it's like sometimes it's kind of like boring because you see like TV shows and the main characters always have something going on, the outgoing people who are always doing stuff, and it's never the person who's like sitting at home having a book and I just went to the grocery store.
I will say you kind of hit two things for me. With the people pleasing, it's like, oh, you always come to me for whatever issue. You're technically getting their baggage as well, whether you realize it or not. That like that is negativity that you're also receiving. You might not receive it as like, oh, this is negative, but it is negativity. And so that could also play into the factor into why you might need therapy. But also with the being boring, I will say it's never the best to like compare yourself to others. No, I'm not taking a shot at you, Tyler. I'm want to make that really clear right now. These are just the thoughts of my mind, that comparing yourself to how other people live or into TV, it's not the best way, because with TV it's scripted. They get 7, 8 writers to write the perfect life, and we never get to see the boring, oh, I'm eating cereal,
Right.
or I stubbed my toe, or whatever. Those are cutscenes, and we just jump to the next part in the show because they're purposely made to be entertaining for however long they are.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But I mean, I've accepted it now. It's just how I am. Like I'm just hanging out.
This is me.
And I'm perfectly fine with it now. So it's just, beforehand I was having a thing about it, but it's kind of like, meh. And then now I feel like because I have better boundaries with how I like try to talk with people about their stuff. I'm not gonna jump into an argument with you and defend you to this other person. Like I'm not gonna do that. And I've also been more, if I hear something or somebody like gives me advice or wants advice from me, like I typically like, okay, this is not anything that has to do with me, and I'm just like supporting a friend and just listening to them. And that's kind of like what I do now. But I feel like, yeah, it definitely for me was a thing that I had to go to therapy for. But it's just one of those things that like I hadn't seen beforehand, because also I was just kind of like that person when I was younger, and also kind of like in my family I took that role on and nobody really told me to not take it on. So it's one of those things where I wouldn't have caught it. Like I just wouldn't have caught it. Everybody thought that was like regular me. And then actually my other friends started going to therapy and they were like, I feel like I'm trauma dumping on you, so I don't want to tell you this stuff anymore. And I was like, what? And then I was just like, oh, because they went to therapy, they're telling me something and I don't know how to receive it. So that actually wasn't the thing that led me to therapy, but it was just one of the things in my mind, like, oh, okay, like they were already kind of seeing how our interactions could have been unpositive. And like maybe they were feeding into something that even they themselves didn't realize till they went to therapy. And then when they went there and they had that reflection, it helped me even further when I finally went to therapy to get that reflection myself. And so I think sometimes just even talking to somebody who's been therapized helps you kind of like maybe trigger something within your mind, or maybe even something that you wouldn't have even thought was a scenario in your relationship that you needed to maybe process can be brought up.
Mm-hmm. You know, a couple things come to mind when both of you are talking. One of them is we could probably all use an upgrade in the way we relate to ourselves and to other people. So it doesn't have to be a crisis that brings people to therapy. And some couples do. They're kind of like, we have a good relationship, but we'd really like to communicate better. But for the most part, people come to therapy when they're in pain, when something's really not working. And that's okay. We don't go to a doctor if we're feeling well. We might want to improve our diet or get more exercise or, drink cleaner water or breathe fresher air or, do something else to improve our health. But we don't necessarily go to the doctor unless we're really feeling sick or injured. And what I would say is that, so I think anybody could benefit from upgrading their relationship to themselves and other people, even if they're not in a crisis. But what I would also add because everybody's not going to go to therapy and everybody doesn't have access to that kind of help in our country and certainly in the world. And what I would love to see, besides that it's funded, that all healthcare covers therapy, because I do think it should be available to anyone who wants. But I would love to see psychology be taught in our schools as a regular course, not as an elective, but teach our kids about family therapy, teach our kids about healthy communication, what makes healthy communication, teach our kids about what abuse and neglect look like, and make it safe for them to report that if there's something going on with them or in their family or that they see in their community. Teach people about group dynamics and the influence of, what makes somebody a bully, what makes a kid withdraw, what contributes to somebody being an addict, rather than criticizing them or putting them down because they're not functioning well. Teach people about what creates that kind of symptom in the first place. Because as a therapist, you see that all the time. A child comes to therapy and they're being hugely aggressive to their siblings, or they're failing in school and they're a smart kid. We look for what's bothering them, what's causing them anxiety or pain or fear, to really get to the root of what's causing the problem. And so, I think the more people that are informed about psychology up front, the better access they have to being healthier themselves in relationship and getting help if they need it. So I think it's a multi kind of pronged approach.
You saying psychology shouldn't be just an elective, I definitely agree with you with that. But
Yeah.
no, I definitely agree that it should be universal. Like it should be there that way.
Right.
Like how you said before, that we aren't just treating the symptom,
Right.
but
You're treating the cause.
treating the
Right.
cause.
Right. And I think the more people, there's so many people out there in the world today, and we can just talk about America, but I think it's all over the world, who have no idea why they rage. They have no idea why they're on drugs. They have no idea why they isolate and, are agoraphobic or, suffer from anxiety or they're obsessive. People just, unless they have some understanding of what causes these kinds of things on a psychological, family dynamics, interpersonal level, we just think we're flawed human beings. And that's a tragedy. Nobody's born a flawed human being. We're all born pure, innocent little beings who then get kind of written on. And, some of that writing has to be erased.
Yeah, that's very true. I've actually been getting the inner child work lately. So I do feel like when you do stuff that is more tied to what you used to do when you were like a kid, it kind of brings you back into that and it gives you a different kind of joy. So it's kind of nice because, they kind of take it from you when you become an adult. You everything starts costing money. You're like, oh boy, how am I going to do this? But I don't know. Inner child stuff is just like getting ice cream and getting a coloring book. I'll be honest with you. I have 3 coloring books. I love it though. And I'm not ashamed of it. An adult coloring book is there for a reason. And I'm one of the buyers. So and also another thing that you were talking about that actually made me think about it. The reason I did actually start getting counseling was because I was going through a dark time in undergrad because my dad was going through something and it really upset me and basically kind of put me I don't like saying depressive episode, but I was in bed, I wasn't getting up, I really didn't see anybody for a while, and afterward I was like, I have to go to a counselor. And the only reason I even started in undergrad is because it was free then. And so yeah, I do think a lot of times it probably is just because something deep happens and you're just like, I don't know how to deal with this, and then afterward it kind of opens you up to all kinds of other conversations. So it's kind of cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Like even having that level, I was just like, I wonder what the next level of like actually having a therapist would look like for me.
We'll say I am planning on going to therapy. I will mention that before this conversation even happened. I will say I am planning on going to therapy. I have to find one, but what is
Nothing have to battle right there though.
Yeah. What do you think is a good reason to not get out of therapy, but more so switch therapists? Because not every person is the right fit. Like, what is a good sign for it's like, all right, this isn't.
Well, I think in terms of the second one, when it's a time to switch therapists, I think pretty much in our lives, we know who we jive with and who we don't. You know when you feel comfortable with someone, if you feel like being more vulnerable with them or sharing more deeply, and you know when you don't. And I think we should just trust that. I don't think a person should second guess himself. If you go to a therapist and you don't feel totally comfortable and you don't feel seen, or you really don't feel helped in any way, then you don't have to stay. There's no right or wrong. You get to, if you're going to ask for help, you should find the person that feels the most helpful to you. And sometimes it's that they have an amazing technique that they do with you, like hypnotherapy or EMDR or inner child work or family work or whatever. And sometimes it's just like the person you needed to talk to because they get you and they're empathetic and they're there with you. But I think we should trust ourselves and with that. And in terms of when is the time to leave therapy, I think it's when, and there's no one size fits all for anything, for
Of
sure.
course.
I mean, every person is different and every relationship is different. But I think in general, people tend to leave therapy. Well, sometimes they leave too soon because they get scared. There's too much to face, or, often people will come to therapy and talk about a very bad relationship, but they're scared to leave. And at some point, they leave therapy instead of the relationship, and that happens. But they might come back later. But I think in general, you kind of know that it's time to leave therapy when, and it's not a head thing, it's you just kind of know. You don't have to talk yourself into this. It's when you feel like you're coping well enough. We all have stuff. Our stuff's not going to go away. There's going to be someone who makes us upset, or a job that doesn't work out, or a relationship doesn't work out, or our kids are in pain, or whatever it is. But when we feel like we have the resources to handle it without falling apart ourselves or without doing something that we don't feel good about, then it's okay to leave therapy. It's like, I always come up with that image of like a therapist helps you get on the bike, holds the back of the bike while you learn to ride and get balance. And when you have balance, you can ride away, and you're supposed to. We don't go to doctors forever. We go to the doctor to get a certain medication or to get a surgery or whatever, some kind of treatment. And then when we're better, we don't go back, So I think it's like that.
Man, I really like how you stated that. That was like a good way to think about it.
I never thought about that. I'm letting I'm going to use that some way somehow. I'm going to use it. But do you have any other questions or anything, Tyler, Phyllis?
No, we're good.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. This was a good talk.
This is great. So, great. Phyllis, do you have anything you like? This is your time to shine.
Well, I would love to just say to your audience that I wrote a book called American Therapy, and it's bringing all of these principles of healing ourselves to healing our country, because I feel very passionate about and worried for our country with the level of violence and divisiveness and hatred and escalation of mass killings and discrimination and injustice and poverty. These are things that we, in the world of psychology, we do know how to address some of this. We do know what helps a family become healthy for all of its members. We're never going to do it perfectly, but we could do a whole lot more for each other in this country than we're doing now. And so I would love to see those principles, brought to national attention as well as into our own individual lives, because also the more we heal ourselves, the more we're likely to be healthy, contributing members to our larger society and not be the people who are bullies or extortionists or, acting out with violence and hatred. So it's that combination between the macrocosm and the microcosm. But I guess the one thing that I just always like to say kind of in ending is that, a lot of people today feel helpless. They feel like there's nothing they can do. It's just, the terrible things that are happening in the country are too big, even though there's wonderful people doing amazing things all over the country and all over the world. There are people who are big sisters and big brothers and who are, cleaning up the water and, volunteering in schools and volunteering with prisoners. And, there's enormous amount of generosity going on in our country, of philanthropy and donating time and resources. It doesn't always make the news, but I did some research when I was writing my book, and there's quite a bit of generosity in our country that goes unnoticed. But for anyone who feels helpless about turning the tide here, I would just say, do what you can in the circle of people that you live in. You were talking about this before. Give somebody a hug. Ask them how they're feeling. Go out of your way to do some little kindness. Acknowledge people for the good things they do. There's so many people in the workplace today, for instance, who never hear thanks for the good job that they do. It's just kind of expected and they feel taken for granted. And just having someone say, wow, you did a great job there. Or, when you come in and smile at everybody in the morning, it just lights up the room. It doesn't even have to be anything big, that we just acknowledge each other. And it's just like the best food that we could feed each other. And it's free.
I'm with the thank you. You get tired of me saying thank you. I guarantee you that, because I think it goes a long way. But
all right, Julian, it's time.
It's my time to do the thing.
The thing.
The thing. All right. So I'm doing something slightly different. I'm bringing 2 quotes for my thing. The first quote. This one's for all the parents. It is, quit yelling at your kids before they go to bed and expect them to sleep well at night. Quit yelling at your kids in the morning right before they go to school and expect them to have a good day. And then the second quote, it's for everyone. And it's, again, Des Bryant is who said this. You set the tone for yourself. You set the tone for your voice that they will always remember in their heads. You become their inner voice. Don't become their inner critic.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
My last little bit is, if you made it this far, thank you so much for making this far. If you know someone who would benefit from this, or you think they would enjoy, share with them, or at the very least, leave a review, comment. It would mean a lot for us. And then if you would like to support the show at all, you can at Patreon, Patreon, Not Enough Questions. The description will be below. And then people who watch this on YouTube, there's a website there too where you can see all the episodes and hear more. But yeah.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you.
Wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I
And
enjoyed it.
And I guess my my closing statement is, don't forget to ask yourself, ask others, never stop asking questions. See you.
See you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.